Mount Logan doesn't make headlines like Everest or Denali. There's no crowds, no fixed ropes, no backup. Just a massive, unforgiving peak rising nearly 6,100 meters into the Yukon sky. One of the largest mountains on Earth by sheer mass. Most people have never heard of it. Fewer still have laid eyes on it. And for good reason. Getting there isn't simple. You can't drive. You can't hike it. A bush plane drops you at the base, then it's days of hauling gear across endless glaciers before you even touch the mountain. By the time you start climbing Logan, you're already exhausted. But for some, that intense challenge is exactly the point. In July 1987, two elite climbers set out to conquer one of its deadliest routes, the Hummingbird Ridge. It had only been climbed once before, until Dave Cheesmond and Catherine Freer attempted it. Then they vanished. For over a decade, Mount Logan kept its secrets. Then, in the early 2000s, something unexpected appeared on the ridge. Tucked deep in Canada's northwest, the Yukon is a land of extremes. Towering mountains, endless forests, and a winter that can lock the land in ice for months. It's one of the most remote, untouched places on the planet. And rising above it all is Mount Logan. At nearly 6,100 meters, it's Canada's highest peak. But what really sets it apart isn't just height, it's scale. Logan isn't just a mountain, it's an entire world of ice and rock, with one of the largest base circumferences of any peak on Earth. Unlike Everest or Denali, Mount Logan remains almost completely untouched. Every year, around 700 to 1,000 climbers attempt Everest. Another 1,000 take on Denali. But on Mount Logan, fewer than 100. That's not just because it's remote. It's because of what it demands. The mountain sits inside Kluane National Park, a UNESCO World Heritage Site, protecting one of the largest non-polar ice fields on the planet. Massive glaciers spill from its summits, stretching for kilometers in every direction. Before climbers even reach the base of the mountain, they have to navigate this frozen maze, hauling heavy sleds for days. And then there's the weather. Storms roll in without warning. Temperatures can drop from mild to minus 40 degrees Fahrenheit in hours. Whiteouts can erase the world around you. When that happens, there's nowhere to hide. No rescue team is coming. No one even knows exactly where you are. For most, this alone is enough to turn back. But for climbers like Dave Cheesmond and Catherine Freer, this was exactly the kind of challenge they trained for. One that demanded skill, experience, and absolute focus. Dave Cheesmond wasn't just a strong climber. He was the kind of climber other elite climbers looked up to. Born in South Africa in 1952, he was a mathematical genius who graduated with an engineering degree at just 19 years old. But numbers weren't his passion. The mountains were. By the late 1970s, Dave and his family made the bold decision to move to Canada, where he quickly carved out a reputation as one of the best climbers in North America. He wasn't just skilled, he was a pioneer. He worked as a mountain guide, owned a climbing equipment shop, and even designed gear that pushed the sport forward. By 1987, his climbing resume was legendary. He'd already completed the second ascent of the Emperor Face on Mount Robson in British Columbia, a near-vertical wall of rock and ice that most climbers only dream about. Climbed the Shield on El Capitan, a 3,000-foot vertical granite wall that takes most teams over a week to ascend. And been part of the first team to climb the east face of Mount Everest. Catherine Freer was just as impressive. At 37, she was already recognized as one of the strongest female climbers in the US. She discovered climbing at 19 in the Pacific Northwest and quickly established herself on some of the hardest routes in the country. Her achievements spoke for themselves. She climbed Zanieta Mondata on El Capitan, a route so technically difficult that even today it's considered a major accomplishment. She summited Cholatsi in Nepal, a 21,000-foot Himalayan peak with steep ice faces in every direction. She even attempted K2, a mountain known as far deadlier than Everest. But Catherine wasn't just a climber. She had a deep interest in psychology and kept detailed journals about her experiences. She guided climbing trips for the University of Washington and led whitewater rafting expeditions. Friends described her as thoughtful and deeply introspective, someone who wasn't in it for the fame, but for the pure experience. Dave and Catherine had climbed together before, building the kind of trust that only comes when your life depends on the person on the other end of the rope. When Dave and Catherine set their sights on Mount Logan in July 1987, they didn't just choose any route. They chose one of the hardest climbs in North America, a route so dangerous that even the best climbers in the world avoided it, the Hummingbird Ridge. It was first climbed in 1965, when a large team spent 30 days battling their way up its treacherous slopes. No one had repeated it since, and there was a reason for that. The Hummingbird Ridge is one of the longest and most grueling alpine routes in the world. The ridge alone stretches over 3,650 meters along Mount Logan before meeting the final ascent to the summit. What makes Hummingbird Ridge so dangerous isn't just its size, it's the relentless combination of challenges. Razor-thin ridges, barely wider than a boot, with 1,000-meter drops on either side. Avalanches, a wall of snow moving at 320 kilometers per hour, can be triggered by something as small as a single step. If you're caught, there's no outrunning it. Massive overhanging cornices, unstable snow formations that can collapse without warning. Near vertical sections of rock and ice, where a single mistake can mean instant disaster. The altitude makes every movement exhausting. The cold drains your energy fast. And with no easy way up or down, even small mistakes can turn deadly. Total isolation. If anything goes wrong, there's no rescue. The only way out is up or down the same deadly ridge. The 1965 team described it as harder than anything we had ever done. Even today, mountaineering experts consider it one of the most challenging routes in the world. But for Dave and Catherine, this wasn't about fame or records. It was about pure climbing. They weren't bringing a big team, no fixed ropes, no pre-established camps, just two climbers, moving fast and light, taking on one of the most dangerous climbs on the planet on their own terms. On July 8, 1987, Dave and Catherine stepped onto the Hummingbird Ridge. Their approach was alpine style, fast and light, carrying only the essentials. No fixed ropes, no backup teams, no margin for error. Everything they needed, food, shelter, survival gear, was on their backs. For the first few days, everything seemed to be going to plan. Other climbers on different routes spotted them moving steadily through the lower sections of the ridge. They looked strong, confident, and efficient, tackling difficult terrain that only the most elite climbers attempt. But Mount Logan's weather is famously unpredictable. Storms on Logan can erupt out of nowhere, turning a clear day into a whiteout in minutes. Temperatures can plummet to minus 40 degrees centigrade overnight. High winds can strip the warmth from your body faster than you can replace it. And when that happens, stopping isn't an option. For days, they made steady progress up the Hummingbird Ridge. Other climbers in the area had seen them moving strong and climbing efficiently. And then they disappeared. At some point after that last sighting, something went wrong. No one knows exactly what. Did a sudden storm trap them, leaving them exposed with no chance of escape? Did a cornice collapse, sending them plummeting thousands of meters down the mountain's steep face? Did one of them become injured or sick, making it impossible to continue or retreat? The truth is, we'll never know. There are rumors of a final radio call. Some climbers in the area claimed they briefly heard Catherine's voice before the transmission cut out. But if that call really happened, no one has ever confirmed what was said or when it occurred. What we do know is that Dave and Catherine never reached the summit. They never returned to base camp. When Dave and Catherine missed their scheduled return, the climbing community immediately knew something was wrong. These weren't weekend hikers who had simply gotten lost. They were world-class mountaineers who knew the risks and always planned carefully. Search and rescue teams mobilized as fast as possible, but the task ahead was nearly impossible. Searching Mount Logan with its sheer size, brutal weather, and complex terrain was like trying to find a single footprint in an endless expanse of ice and rock. Helicopters couldn't reach the upper sections of the Hummingbird Ridge. The altitude was too high, and the air was too thin. Even if they could, the ridge was far too narrow to land. Ground teams faced an even greater risk. Climbing onto the ridge to search meant putting more lives in danger on a route that had already claimed 2 elite climbers. Days turned into weeks. Brief weather windows opened and closed. Aerial searches revealed nothing but the mountain's vast, empty slopes. With no signs of either of them, hope began to fade. After exhaustive efforts, the search was finally called off. For 13 years, Mount Logan kept it secret. Then, in April 2000, something unexpected happened. A helicopter carrying Kluane National Park staff was flying over Mount Logan on a routine survey. As they passed over Hummingbird Ridge, they saw it. On a perilously narrow stretch of knife-edge ridge, a body motionless against the ice. Rick Staley, a park warden who had been part of the original 1987 search, was on the flight. The moment he saw it, he knew. The only climbers missing in that area were Dave and Catherine, but from this distance, there was no way to tell which one it was. This section of the ridge was barely half a meter wide in places, with 1,200-meter cliffs plunging away on either side. The helicopter couldn't land. The terrain was too dangerous. Park officials made the difficult decision to not attempt a recovery. "It's not worth endangering other people's lives," Staley said. The risk of losing more climbers in an extraction attempt was simply too high. And to this day, no one has successfully climbed the Hummingbird Ridge since that first ascent in 1965. Climbers like Dave Cheesmond and Catherine Freer weren't chasing records or fame. They climbed because it was who they were. Because there's something about stepping into the unknown, pushing past limits, and relying on nothing but your skill, judgment, and resilience. But mountains don't care about experience. Even the strongest, smartest climbers can be caught in the wrong place at the wrong time. They weren't reckless. They weren't naive. But in the world of extreme mountaineering, the line between success and tragedy is impossibly thin. Some climbers see that as a reason to turn back. Others see it as the reason to go. And when they look up at Mount Logan today, they're left with the same question Dave and Catherine once asked themselves: how far would you go?